So we covered enhanced due diligence, but there's one other component that I want to make sure that we all understand, and it's that beneficial owner requirements for legal entity customers. Now, legal entity customers, those are customers that you go to the government and you have them create a legal entity. So it's a corporation, an LLC, or some formalized partnership that's drawn up. But there's a requirement that we find out who are the people that own and operate this legal entity. And so letter B on your page there's two types of beneficial owner that we need to be identifying. And really the step is this: we're going to identify beneficial owners. We're going to verify their identities, similar to what we did with CIP. And then we're going to have a certification where the person who's opening this account is going to certify that everything they told you and gave you is true and accurate to the best of their knowledge. So what are the two flavors? Well, there's letter A is the individual with significant managerial control. So they want to know a person or a heartbeat. Who is the person who is running this legal entity or running this company? Okay, so number one, significant managerial control. And then letter B is 25% or more ownership. So any of the people who have up to a quarter of the company in their ownership, they're a beneficial owner. So 25% or more. Now, I want to pause here. Your company could mess with that threshold. You need to collect 25% or more under the law. So if anybody who owns a quarter of that company or more, they're a beneficial owner, and you have to go through the beneficial owner process. But your financial institution may decide, you know what, I want to know about anybody who owns 10% or more of this company. And that's perfectly fine. You need to follow your procedures because that's based on your risk profile. But the law says it's 25% or more. So that could get you anywhere from 0 to 4 beneficial owners. Now, when would you have 0 under this prong? So you're always going to have the one. You're always going to have one person with significant managerial control. But you'll have anywhere from 0 to 4 people who own 25% or more. Well, how could you have 0? Well, maybe you have 5 people and they all own 20% of the company. Well, in that case, none of those 5 have more than 25% ownership, so that none of them would be a beneficial owner under this rule. But you would still have the one person that you would collect information on. But you could have up to 4. You could have 4 people who have 25%. So if you check my math at any point, you're going to have from 1 to 5 total beneficial owners. Now, keep in mind, some companies have complex ownership structures, and you can't just find out, okay, ABC Inc. is owned by XYZ Corp. You can't just stop there. You have to drill down through all the corporate entities underneath your customer and find out who are the people, who are the heartbeats behind this company. And if you look, it can get awful complicated. So page 13, you can see this. This is straight out of some of the guidance that's out there. And it lays out, this could get relatively complicated, especially when you have multiple companies that are owning part of your legal entity customer. So if you look on the page, top of the page, legal entity customer is owned by 2 other companies, 50-50. So company A and company B both own half of your customer. Now, remember, you have to drill down through that. You can't just stop and say it's company A and company B. You have to find out who owns company A and company B. And that's where it gets complicated. You see, Alan and Betty own company A. Alan owns over 50% of company A. So if you do your math, since he owns more than half of company A, that's more than 25% of your legal entity customer. So you could circle Alan. He is a beneficial owner. Now, Betty, if you look at the 40% that she owns under company A, well, only 40% of that half is only 20% of the whole. Okay, if you follow my math there. She only owns 20% of the legal entity customer by virtue of her ownership interest in company A. But you can't stop there. You have to find out who owns company B. And that's what this slide is trying to get across. Betty owns part of company B. So since she owns part of A and part of company B, you have to add those 2 parts together because that is all ownership of the legal entity customer at the top. So Betty's combined ownership rights is over 25%. It's 36.66 repeating. So under those circumstances, Betty would also be a beneficial owner. So This can get complicated, and there's some examples that you can go through later on if you're confused by this. But just want to get on the same page. A legal entity customer, it's basically, think of the rule of thumb is if it's created at you go to the state, like the Secretary of State, and create this legal entity, that's what triggers this requirement. That's a little different than something like a trust. A trust, you don't go to the government to have it created. So a trust isn't a legal entity. You can go to any Yahoo attorney, they can draw up a trust agreement, and you can operate under that trust agreement. So it's slightly different here. So the legal entity, there's some exemptions that are in there. You have a legal entity, they could be, the exemptions are in your program, but it's things like government entities or maybe publicly traded companies, things along those lines. I would check my procedures before you ever decided you had a legal entity that was exempt. And then you have partial exemptions for charities. So if you have a charity, you're still going to identify the one person who has significant control over the charity. But since nobody really owns a charity that has a charitable purpose that isn't about ownership rights, you don't have to identify those ownership prong beneficial owners. Now, there's special rules for a legal entity that's owned by a trust. Now, I just got done saying, well, a trust isn't a legal entity, but what you could have is a legal entity that's actually owned by a trust. And if that's the case, you're still going to identify the one person who has significant managerial control. But for that ownership prong, you're going to look at who is the trustee and then follow the rules on the bottom of page 14. So if you have a legal entity owned by a trust, you identify who's running the legal entity. And then for the ownership prong, you find out who is the trustee and follow the rules on page 14 down there.